Okay, everybody. Module 5.3, last subtopic module for authentic leadership. Okay, before we get into servant leadership in 5.4 and 5.5. Module 5.3, we're going to look at the factors that influence or impact leaders who utilize authentic leadership. Okay, now you think influence or impact? I mean, influence. The rain, the cold weather can influence what you wear. Impact is another one where it's a little bit different here, where you're talking about a direct cause and effect relationship. Okay, so we're going to look at things that can influence to shift us a little bit on our directional, and then things that can cause an impact, which could be a paradigm shift. I mean, it could be a changing 180-degree direction kind of thing. For leaders, that's you again, who utilize some component, or maybe just utilize authentic leadership in and by itself. Like I said, a lot of authentic leaders utilize it to fill holes from other, like situational leadership. Hershey and Blanchard, situational. Okay, so what are the factors that can influence, okay, an authentic leader? Well, obviously there's that positive psychological capacity. What's your confidence? We're talking within you. Okay, looking at yourself in the mirror kind of thing. Okay, hey, look, anybody in a managerial / leadership component, managerial in and by itself, yeah, you got some leadership, but you're following within the confines of what somebody else established. Somebody else gave you the upper and lower control limits. You got a little bit of freedom in that, but not as much as you think. Okay, a leader is an individual who's establishing those upper and lower control limits for everybody else to follow. Okay. Yes, confidence is a big deal. All right. Now, obviously, you don't want an escalation of commitment. If you know you're going the wrong direction, you're like, oh, I'm, riding this road, train all the way into hell kind of thing. No, don't do that. Okay. But you're confident. Based on your knowledge base, based on what you've got, the information presented in front of you, you are sure that this is the right direction. Okay. Hope. All right. Hope is another internalized component too. You're hoping for the best outcomes. We all are. Everybody is hoping for the best possible outcome. All right. You're not just wishing. I mean, you're facilitating a process, a plan to achieve that outcome. It's like an athlete. You're hoping every time you do something, you hope to win. And you have a plan, a process, a strategy to facilitate that win. Are you going to win every time? Well, probably not. Okay. But if you've got a good process, you've got good assets in place, you've got the resources and that are now capabilities, all right, you're probably going to do pretty good. You're optimistic of a positive outcome, obviously. Pessimism just doesn't facilitate very well with leadership. Okay. Oh, we're all over. This is the end. Everything is garbage. It's just not, people don't want to follow that. Nobody wants that. Okay. You're not looking for rainbows and unicorns as a follower, but you're looking for a positive possible outcome. And resilience, perseverance. Can you stay the path? Every time you get something thrown at you, get knocked down, you get back up and you keep moving that same direction. And moral reasoning capacities. And we're talking about here, you can decide between right and wrong. You know what's right, you know what's wrong. Mala prohibita, mala in se. Okay. Mala in se, it's just wrong in and by itself. I don't have to be told. Prohibita means prohibited. Speeding is not wrong in and by itself. That's mala prohibita. Mala in se, murder, harming children. I mean, those are things that are just, you know what's right, you know what's wrong. Okay. You will not do what's wrong. Okay. I will not violate my ethical code. I will not violate federal law. I will not do these things for you. If that means my employment here is done, and it's done. Okay. And it is. You promote justice, the greater good. You're always looking to promote the firm, fair, and consistent. That's one thing I had burned into my brain by Dr. Hines, one of my OB professors I had as a doctoral student. He was talking about leadership, and he said, always be firm, fair, and consistent. Doesn't matter what level of management, strategic, tactical, operational. He said, does not matter. Be firm, fair, and consistent. And he was saying what? Promote justice. Okay. If you be firm, fair, and consistent across the board, people will respect you. They may not like you. They may not like some of your rulings, but they know what they're going to get. That's an authentic leader. Okay. In a nutshell, that's what you're kind of looking at here. And it is. Critical life events, both positive and negative, can facilitate some component of authentic leadership. I said, act as a catalyst for change. Okay. We talked about this earlier, and I'm going to have to agree with the recently departed, I am not recent, but departed Dr. Hawkins. The only constant in the universe is change. Okay. And I kind of always want to argue death and taxes as well, but that's a whole nother story. Okay. Change. Sometimes change is positive, sometimes change is negative, but change is always consistent. And we fight it. Why? Because we like the status quo, because we know, especially as followers, we know what tomorrow's going to bring. We know what tomorrow's going to bring. If you had to worry every day that your job might not be there tomorrow, all right, that's going to cause you some issues. Stress, minimum stress. Maximum, you're going to be so focused on trying to find what? More stability somewhere else. Okay. People attach insight to their life experiences. It means something. Right. I'm not a big fan of coincidences. I don't really believe in coincidences. I know there's I think Einstein said it, that coincidences were God's way of remaining anonymous. Okay. I think you may be onto something there. I'm not stipulating a religious thing here. I'm just stipulating, there seems to be patterns. Okay. Not just in nature, but in people. All right. People attach insight to their experiences. They mean something. I did this in the past and this was the outcome. I did it again and this was the outcome. You can say it, well, that's a pattern, correct. But there's insight into that pattern. It means something. People usually, when they say something, especially when the first words out of their mouth, that's usually what they mean. They don't have time to regulate the thought process in their head. It's not what people do, especially when they're angry, especially when they're emotional, especially when their voice elevates. People start yelling. I start paying attention, not because they're yelling. I don't care about that. Okay. But all they're telling me is whatever they're going to say next is what they really mean. All right. And it is. When people tell life stories, they gain clarity about who they are. It helps to understand, maybe even Maslow's self-actualization, if we want to go down that road. All right. That's more motivation than it is actually leadership or understanding authentic leadership, but there's a point to it. Okay. It's that we gain clarity. We understand. Okay. I know where I belong. I know what I am doing. I know the place I fill, the peace I feel, instead of just being like just another cog in the wheel kind of thing. It stimulates personal growth. Right? It's designed to get you to grow. Positive, you see a positive event, you grow that direction. You have a negative event, you try hard risk mitigation to make sure you don't go down that road again. You mitigate away from that particular negative outcome, and it helps you to grow, to make sure you don't do what? Don't do the same thing again. Don't touch the stove kind of thing. And hopefully never touch the stove. It was turned on the first time. Okay. So how does authentic leadership theory really work? Well, keep in mind, it is a complex developmental process. It is complex. Why? Because it involves an individual. It involves individuals with an S, an individual leader and individual followers with an S. Okay. It can be complex because, the old, what's the old phrase? Everybody brings in their own baggage. Okay. You can't separate the individual from the organization. Once the individual walks into the business, the person doesn't disappear. They're still there. They don't become another, cog in a wheel. They don't just become another social security number. Okay. They're a human being with human wants, desires, human, everybody, I think you pretty much understand where I'm going with this. And it's developmental, which means it changes over time. Okay. 2 + 2 is 4. I probably learned that in kindergarten or first grade. It hasn't changed. I'm older. I have a whole lot more education and work. I mean, I had no work experience at 5, but you get the idea, or 6. Right. But that doesn't change. But the developmental process has. I can understand a little bit more complicated math than 2 + 2 is 4. Okay. Even though that foundation is the same, it hasn't changed. Right. And the practical approach, okay, are very prescriptive. And here I'm pulling forth George because I like his 2003 article. 5 characteristic leaders need to be, the 5 characteristics that leaders need to be authentic. We've already talked a little bit about these. They have a purpose and they have a passion for that purpose. The values are basically out there, behavior. People can see your values. People can see what you believe. Okay. This guy said A to me and he said B to you. All right. That basically tells me that he's not trustworthy. Okay. The leader said, we're doing X and I believe this is Y and I believe we need to do it because of this. And here's my logic and reason. and their behaviors and their values correlate. They build relationships based on that connectedness. Okay. Now we could go back to LMX here if you want to, talking about in groups and out groups. Okay. But the goal is, even in the out group, there is a connectedness. It's not a strong link, but there is a link. Okay. They have self-discipline and they are consistent. Right. They do not leave the yellow brick road. Dorothy, stay on the yellow brick road. If you just would have stayed on the yellow brick road, stay on the yellow brick road. Don't deviate from the yellow brick road. That's self-discipline. No matter what you see going on around you, no matter what little bells and whistles that are out there to distract you, stay focused on where you're going. Perseverance of effort. Okay, it's part of grit if you don't know what that is. Consistency of interest, perseverance of effort. Okay, and heart, which shows in their compassion. You're not a robot. People are not interchangeable. They're living, breathing human beings. They have their own wants and desires, their own stresses, their own loves and hates, and fill in the blank. Okay. Therefore, you could be empathetic, but you still have to stay the course. And does that mean there's going to be negative time? There are things that you're negatively going to have to deal with as a leader? Yes. I'm sorry, but yes. Everybody loves to celebrate the win. Celebrate the wins, but take no joy in the losses. Okay, meaning you may have to do a reduction in force. You may have to let people go. Right? It's part of the business process. It stinks. It's not fun. Been down that road. Did not enjoy it. Tore my heart out the first time. Okay, because these are people people you work with. Right? Yeah, if there's 1,000 employees underneath you, you may not know. I mean, you know who all of them maybe are, but you may not really know. You have it personal. But there were times I knew people personally. Okay. Yeah, your heart, which shows your compassion, but this is coming to pass. There's just no way around this. All right. And that's the way it is. Okay. And it is. We talk about the effect on followers. Authentic leadership correlates with employees thriving, creating their hope, their optimism, their engagement. These are all things we've talked about already. Okay. The goal is that not only do you grow, but you help them grow within the larger organization to reach organizational goals. Okay. People want to belong. The need for affiliation, the need for achievement. Remember, we talked about all this before. The need for affiliation is strong. People want to belong. They want to be part of a collective. We all do. It's human nature. Okay. I don't think Tom Hanks was having a really good time on that island with the Wilson, the volleyball. I think it's called Castaway. It's a movie. Why? He left. He could have stayed on the island, stayed alive. There was probably enough food to survive. Obviously, he would have died if not. Okay. But he said, no, I'm going to get on a raft I made with, I think, a sail of porta potty. Is that what it was? Have you guys seen the movie? To go out onto the Pacific Ocean to possibly what? Die. Okay. To starve to death out on the water, or to have his raft fall apart or capsized and drowned, that kind of thing. Okay. Instead of taking the safe route, he actually took the risk. So what are some of the strengths? Well, number one, yeah, it facilitates trustworthy leadership. Like I said, you may not agree on what the leader says and does, but you can trust what they say is what they're going to do. It fills a void in a very uncertain world, especially today. We have a very uncertain world out there, not just globally, but domestically in relation to what's going on in this country. Okay. Provides broad guidelines. Both practical and theoretical provide a map. They have to work together. The theory leads to the practical. The practical allows you to look back on the theory and say, okay, based on this, I think we should do this. Based on this, I think we should do that. Okay, like transformational and servant leadership, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit. Okay, authentic leadership has an implicit moral dimension. You're constantly focused on the collective good. Okay, what's in the best interest? You know what? We want the company to make money. We want shareholders to be happy. Maximize shareholders' wealth is important. We want to do that because that makes sure that we have a job. That makes sure that the company keeps growing. I'm sorry, in a capitalist structure, and it's the only one that works, plain and simple, okay? You either grow or you die as a business-driven for-profit organization. You grow or you die, period, okay? And therefore, you're able to facilitate what? The best labor, the best leadership, the best materials, the best, work in progress, the best finished goods. Okay. You provide a quality product at a good price. And yes, you will grow. Why? Because people trust that your product has value. Okay. Shareholders will be happy because they're earning a return on their investment. And the process keeps moving forward, which is what the ultimate goal, slow, steady growth. Okay. Unlike traits that are only some people exhibit, everyone can learn to be an authentic leader. Okay. It's just learning the process. It's learning what to do, learning when to make the right decisions. Okay. Learning to measure the collective outcome to the internal individual needs. And it can be measured using an established instrument. It's the ALQ. I'm not going to get into it. If you want to look at it, you can Google it and go online. Okay. Where am I at here? Oh, here I am. But there's always, and there should be, and we have to look at both sides. Always look at both sides of the coin. There's always two sides to every story. Okay. Always keep that in mind. If you're only hearing one side, you need to start digging, because there's got to be an alternative. There's got to be a second side to every story. Okay. For every head, there's a tail. Okay. Now the tail may be insignificant. It may be impractical. It may be, close to impossible to ever happen. Doesn't matter. As a leader, you want to make sure, and as a manager, especially strategic manager, definitely, you want to look at both sides of this. Okay. So you can extrapolate the probabilities of outcomes and then choose the best course of action. The theory is still in the formative stages, and it kind of is. Okay. It's not been fully developed because it is so open-ended. It's like an open system, like Jello. It'll go into whatever mold you pour it in. If you got a transformational leader, you can fill in the blanks that they're existing. There's always blanks, guys. Okay. You can never prove a theory. You can just disprove it. Why? Because you can't control all the variables. Nobody can. It's just like when economists say, well, we're measuring GDP on the consumption ceteris paribus. Okay, they're assuming that government spending, investments, exports, and imports don't change. Well, that's not really logical. The moral component is not fully explained. And really, it isn't fully explained even in transformational leadership, in my opinion. Okay. The moral component is somewhat open-ended. It's unclear how higher values such as justice inform AL, and it is. It's, people extrapolate. Okay. People make some assumptions based on what they believe. Okay. You see all these individuals on cable news making assumptions about what they believe something means. Okay. There's no fact to any of this. It's all your opinion based on that you think you're smarter than somebody else. Okay. The rationale for including a positive psychological capacity as part of it has not been fully extrapolated out. Okay. Researchers and academics, and I include myself in this little classification, there are times that we can pick variables and look for correlations. Correlation does not prove causation. Okay. And I've seen PhDs jump from correlations to causations real fast just because they think. All right. You need and it needs to be more researched, more ferreted out, in relation to at least an alpha of 0.05. Okay. And new research is needed to determine if AL works well within the millennial group, especially. Okay. Why? Because that's the younger part of the workforce. I'm Generation X. I'm in the middle group. Okay. The baby boomers are the oldest part of the workforce. All right. I'm Generation X, that smaller group right in the middle there. And then, of course, the millennials are the ones that are, in the main section of getting into the start of their work lives. It needs to be more research done on just that group alone. Okay. Because the millennials have a, different underlying philosophy. They'll jump ship from one company to the next just based on a whim. At least research does show that out. The link between authentic leadership and a positive organizational outcome is unclear too. It's also not clear whether authentic leadership is sufficient to achieve organizational goals. Okay. It might be more of a mitigating factor, just like LMX is a mitigating factor in relation to transformational leadership and positive organizational outcomes. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it should be looked at it from that perspective as well. So how can we as leaders put this into an application format to use? Okay. Well, number one, we know people have the capacity, and it's a lifelong learning process, and it is. Okay. So somebody who's 22 going to be an authentic leader? No, I'm sorry, probably not. Somebody who's 52 could be. Yeah, probably. Why? Because they've probably got 30 years of work experience behind them, and they've learned a few things. Call it wisdom if you want to. Okay. HR departments may be able to foster these behaviors to employees to move in that direction as well, based on what? Federal law, labor laws. Okay. I always say the foundation for ethics in this country, I always call it, is federal law, federal labor laws. That's a good start. That's a start to establishing, okay, the ethical component. What violates federal law, or even you could say, well, state law, and that's more micro. But I look at things more on a macro level, okay, because that's what I'm used to. In a global operation, you deal with the entire country, so federal applies. Obviously, on a smaller business level, you may be based in Georgia, then yeah, it's going to be more state law as well. But anyway, okay, most leaders are already trying to do the right thing, and they are. Most people in leadership are trying to do the right thing. People aren't trying to destroy other people's lives. People aren't trying to hurt the company, or they're not trying to do that. If they are, they're not going to last long anyway. Okay, they're trying to do the right thing, to be honest with themselves and others, to work for the common good. People are already trying to go down the yellow brick road. It's just very hard to do. Okay, and that's why I'm doing a big research project right now dealing with grit, which is consistency of interest, perseverance of effort, with Dr. Duckworth's research as a foundation, Angela Duckworth at the University of Penn. Then also ambition. Okay, ambition is that secondary floating factor going around the other two factors. Okay, leaders are shaped by critical life events that lead to growth and greater authenticity. Our lives, as things change, I went through a life event before I came here. It's the reason I left where I was at Southeast Missouri State and came here. Yeah, and it was a critical life event. It changed my entire underlying philosophy. Heck, it changed part of my personality, to be honest. And I'm just slowly getting back to my personality on what I went through that I was beforehand. Okay, that it shapes. It's part of that critical life event that shapes who you are and your philosophies and what you believe. All right. It's not a right or wrong thing. It's just we want to understand how that critical life event can help lead to growth and then greater authenticity. I know where I belong. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do it right. Here's what we should do. Okay, hold on here.